The Inquisition appreciates your assistance in this matter, Lady Corbin.
And my miners appreciate your business. You'll have your lyrium by the end of the week. I should tell you, Ambassador, the Chantry raised some fuss when they learned about our arrangement.
The Inquisition must certainly seem an audacious idea to the Grand Clerics. We hope to convince them it is a necessary one as well.
I'll take my leave. Good day.
Who was she, Ambassador?
A merchant. I thought we should reach out to the dwarves to secure lyrium for the Inquisition's mages. According to Lady Corbin, it raised the ire of the Chantry.
How?
Access to lyrium makes us rather more formidable than anticipated. We are becoming a challenge. Sadly, the remaining Grand Clerics appear to be consolidating the Chantry's power, instead of comforting the masses.
The Chantry couldn't solve its own problems when it had a divine.
Yet many people continue to bear it great love. We will not benefit from its decline. Little but the Chantry ties Orlais, Nevarra, Ferelden, Antiva, and even Rivain to a common cause.
Has the Chantry truly promoted such peace?
Andraste's chant is familiar across kingdoms, a source of many shared customs. That is the crucial point. Common ground is the start of all negotiations.
Are you sure? Families often fight the hardest.
Having grown up among four siblings, I concede your point. I found, however, that the only time two parties cannot negotiate is when they cease to speak. We must learn to think beyond our own wants to secure peace in Thedas.
How did someone so lovely and selfless go into Arlesian politics, Lady Montelier?
Well, that is, really, you give me too much credit. While you're here, I do have a question. The remaining Grand Clerics sent a missive inquiring about the events at the Temple of Sacred Ashes. They demand to know whether the Inquisition officially claims that Andraste saved you from the breach. If it were up to you, how would you reply?
Will my answer change your reply to the Chantry?
If 렐lia나, Cassandra, Cullen, and I could agree on our official stance, I could answer that. We should decide soon. The revered mothers don't seem to know what to make of you.
I'd tell the Chantry that Andraste herself shielded me from harm.
I'd truly like to hear the debates that would raise in Val Royeaux. Thank you for your thoughts. A good day to you.
More healing drafts
Yes.
for you, revered mother.
Good.
Thank you.
I understand you were instrumental in garnering the assistance of the rebel mages. It is well done. And I pray this Inquisition fares better than the Chantry in its handling of magic.
You disapprove of something the Chantry did? Are you allowed to do that?
That largely depends upon one's company. While surrounded by those declared heretics already, I am safe enough. In some ways, Andraste had the simpler task. Magic should serve man, and not rule over him. That tells us what should be, but it does not tell us how to get there. So many times the methods of men have undone the spirit of their goals. Once you have sealed the breach, we shall see whether this Inquisition is truer to the Chantry, or its own namesake.
I don't believe I've had the chance to speak candidly with a revered mother. Can you tell me about the Chantry?
Of course. Too many think that the Chant of Light should only be sung by humans. The truth is that knowledge of the Maker and Andraste should be open to all who wish to learn of him. We believe the Maker created us, and that mankind's sinful nature caused him to turn away. With Andraste's blessing, the Maker will forgive mankind once the Chant of Light is sung from all corners of this world.
What is your stance on magic?
Andraste put it simply. Magic must serve man, not rule over him. However, those words must be put into the proper historical context. Andraste led a rebellion against the Tevinter Imperium, whose magisters controlled most of the world at the time. Even then, she never called for all mages to be put to death. She believed in peaceful coexistence.
I don't recall the Chantry being as tolerant of magic as you describe.
No. The Chantry is an imperfect vessel, pulled in every direction by those who would steer its course. Yet the Templars rebelled precisely because divine Justinia was not restrictive enough. Perhaps the Inquisition will find a better way.
There were calls for an exalted march to put down the Mage Rebellion. What was your opinion?
It was ignorant gossip. An exalted march only succeeds when it carries the will of the people. Even then, it cannot be undertaken lightly. People are too easily frightened. We cannot destroy everything they fear. An exalted march is justified only against a true threat to this whole world. It is an offense to the Maker to use it as a political bludgeon, or as a means of spreading the chant of light.
What about the exalted march that conquered the elves?
That is a hotly debated matter in some circles of the Chantry. The elves had conquered Montsemard and threatened Val Royeaux itself. They were not helpless victims. But even then, Orlais was the only nation to provide troops. It was hardly an exalted march of all the faithful. The Maker wishes his world to spread by example, not by war. We win no converts with blood.
Why does the Chantry allow only human women to become priestesses?
The official doctrine is that elves and dwarves have turned further from the Maker than humanity. And as for men, the chant holds that they are more vulnerable to anger or passion. But in truth, it is simply political, added after Andraste's death, like too many of our beliefs.
If you don't believe these restrictions are what Andraste wanted, why haven't you tried to change them?
Has the current state of the world not taught you the folly of fighting too many battles at once? I chose to use what power I had to help peasants forgotten by the nobles of Orlais. I believed there would be time to address their inequality under the Chantry once we had saved them from starving.
Farewell.
Until next time.
Those who steal from their brothers and sisters.
So Fiona and her malcontents are finally under proper authority. That's an excellent beginning, my dear. We will have to discuss how to administrate this new acid. Cullen doesn't have enough Templars to handle incidents. Some of the rank and file need to be trained.
Train our people, but keep it a secret. Let the mages think they're not being watched.
I like the way you think, darling. I'll have a word with Cullen. We are reliant on his people, absolutely. There has never been a greater threat to mages than the breach. Until it is closed, no one is safe.
You have a low opinion of your fellow mages.
It's not so much an opinion as grasping the obvious. Magic is dangerous, just as fire is dangerous. Anyone who forgets this truth gets burned.
You're preaching to the choir, Vivienne.
Tell me something. As you will no doubt have a hand in shaping it, what future do you see for mages?
The circle has to be restored if we want to keep the peace.
That's comforting to hear, but you'll find opposition to the idea even among friends. It's something to consider, my dear. Inquisitor, what can I do for you, darling?
Is there anything I can do to help your efforts at restoring the circle?
After the circles fell, their libraries were plundered by scavengers. 1,000 years of recorded knowledge in the hands of bandits. It makes me sick to think of it. I've received news that some tomes have been located, if you are interested in righting this wrong.
I'll look into it for you.
If you can take care of this matter, the circle would be in your debt. My dear, did you need me for something?
I'd like to know more about you, Madame Vivienne.
Whatever would you like to know?
I'm curious how a circle mage winds up at court here.
Nobody winds up at court, my dear. It takes a great deal of effort to arrive there. I caught the eye of Duke Bastien de Ghislaine, an advantageous when the position of enchanter to the Imperial Court became... Marriage is the business of alliance and inheritance. I'm Bastien's mistress.
And what does the...
We got along quite well. Duchess, she passed away from a fever a few years ago, the poor dear.
Mages. Lovely.
Should have this breach sealed soon enough.
I suppose their gold spent as well as anyone else's.
Blessed are the peacekeepers, the champions of the just. Blessed are the righteous, the lights in the shadow. In their blood, the Maker's will is written. Is that what you want from us? Blood? To die so that your will is done? Is death your only blessing? You speak for Andraste, no? What does the Maker's prophet have to say about all of this? What's his game?
How is this a game?
Do you see the sky? What about the temple ruins? The bones lying in the dust? Even if you didn't support the Divine's peace, you wouldn't call this right. Who could? So many innocent lives. The faithful murdered where the holiest of holies once stood. If the Maker willed this, what is it if not a game or a cruel joke?
Awful things happen every day. Get used to it.
Get used to being a pawn? To be discarded when the Maker's done with you? The Chantry teaches that the Maker abandoned us. He demands repentance for our sins. He demands it all. Our lives, our deaths. Justinia gave him everything she had, and he let her die.
I'm sorry. Her death has clearly hit you hard.
Not just me. All of us. She was the Divine. She led the faithful. She was their heart. If the Maker doesn't intervene to save the best of his servants, what good is he? I used to believe I was chosen, just as some say you are. I thought I was fulfilling his purpose for me, working with the Divine, helping people. But now she's dead. It was all for nothing. Serving the Maker meant nothing.
I'm not really the best person to talk to. Doesn't the Chantry have people for this?
So I should let a priest comfort me? No, this is my burden. I regret that I even let you see me like this. It was a moment of weakness. It won't happen again. Come, to work then. We will speak later.
The Mage Rebellion joins the Inquisition. I've got to admit that's a twist I didn't see coming. One thing you saw in the future worries me. I mean, it was all bad. But Red Lyrium and Ferelden, infecting people and growing out of them, that's bad. Finding more of it really punches a hole in my Red Lyrium at the temple was a coincidence theory.
How long does it take for Red Lyrium to grow? How fast can it spread?
It took years to infect people in Kirkwall, but no one there was actually ingesting the stuff. This Elder One managed to take the worst thing I can think of and make it worse. That's an accomplishment.
I'd like to keep hoping it's a coincidence, if you don't mind. I need to be able to sleep at night.
Honestly, I think I'll give up sleeping for the foreseeable future. I've got people trying to find out where the red stuff came from. I think maybe we should make that a priority. But that's enough doom and gloom. You just won a big victory for the Inquisition. What are you going to do to celebrate?
I was planning to put my feet up, maybe grab a nap. You?
Whatever I do, it'll be as far from Cassandra as I can get. Things should be calm around here for at least the next hour. Take a moment to enjoy it. If the world's about to end, I'm sure the Seeker will let us know.
Well, that's mages all over. So many robes, I bet all of Ferelden lost their curtains. I'll just be the other side of Haven, just in case.
Do you have a problem with our new allies? With mages?
No problem with mages. I mean, you know some that are all right. My problem is magic. If mages sat on their hands, everything would be fine. You know it too, that's why you're shoving them up towers after. That's good, right?
So we have gained the mages. Excellent. They should be able to seal the breach. You are certain you experienced time travel. Could it have been an illusion? A trick of the Fade?
Dorian was sure. Impossible as it seems.
What an amazing gift. It is vital the Inquisition succeed to avoid the future you witness.
I'm surprised you're not more interested in your own future.
I know enough. If that future happened, then I, and Cassandra, Cullen and the rest, failed to stop this Elder One. Speaking of which, you should ready yourself.
For?
This Elder One. You have now interfered with his plans twice. Once at the Temple of Sacred Ashes, and now again at Redcliffe. A being who aspires to godhood is unlikely to ignore such an affront.
Put a leash on the rebel mages, I see. Interesting how they seem to like the idea. As if it's a relief to be penned in again.
There's no other choice.
Oh, I'm not arguing. Just pointing out the ridiculously obvious. It all depends on what you do with these mages later. No guarantee you'll throw them back into circles again, I suppose. I mean, unless you're as thick as you seem. Which would be sad, really.
I'd like to ask you about Tevinter.
Ah, yes. Everyone outside the Imperium always seems quite fascinated by it. Probably why they come up with so many ridiculous tales. Flying cows over Minrathous. It's madness. All right, that one's actually true, but the cows didn't have wings. I digress. Anything in particular you wanted to know?
It seems strange that an entire empire would be ruled by mages.
I find it strange that your mages don't rule anything at all. Actually, the fiction in the Imperium is that mages don't rule. The Magisterium rules. That magisters are all mages is considered a convenient technicality.
What is the Magisterium, exactly?
The upper house of the Imperial Senate, and the only part worth having a seat on. Those seats are split among the circles of Magi, the Chantry, and the major families. All mages now. It's odd that outside the Imperium, you use Magister like it applies to every Tevinter mage.
If you're not a Magister, then what are you called? No special title?
I'm an Altus, which is almost as good as a Magister, depending on who you ask.
I've never heard of an Altus.
Upper class. Those families who trace descent from the Dreamers, the first prophets of the old gods. If you're a mage and you're not Altus, then you're Leitan, lower class. If you're not a mage at all, you're Soperati. That's everyone else. We do love our fancy words.
I thought the Archon ruled over the Imperium.
Well, yes. Technically, he can overrule laws passed by the Magisterium, but that never happens. Even so, he gets to appoint new Magisters, which means all the families vie madly for his favor. Thus, the Archon gets invited to all the parties. The truest path to Tevinter influence, let me tell you.
If it's a fiction, that means mages do rule, then.
Yes and no. Let me put it this way. Mages do rule, but not all mages are equal. If you're not from the right family, chances are you don't rule anything. Maybe you're even a slave. The idea that anyone could be a mage, however, keeps the masses placated.
Can anyone be a mage?
Technically, the potential runs mostly in bloodlines, but it's been known to happen. More importantly, commoners believe it can. Tevinter legend is chock full of mage heroes from humble origins. So they hold out hope. Someday my son or my son's son will be a mage. Someday. Poor sods don't realize that means he'll be a quaestor at the arse end of the 100 Pillars, at best.
Being a quaestor isn't a good thing?
I imagine the average non-mage likes to think so. Counting numbers and shuffling papers all day is better than many occupations after all. If you're a second-class citizen among a pack of piranha, however, your outlook changes.
But let me ask you something else.
Of course.
There's an Imperial Chantry, isn't there? With its own divine?
You people aren't supposed to talk about the Black Divine, are you? If you mention him outside the Imperium, people make that face, like you're urinating in public. But yes, we do have the Chantry, or a version of it. Night and day comparing it to yours.
Is the Imperial Chantry so different from ours?
Not in theory. The main difference is in the whole magic is meant to serve man, not rule over it business. Back home, ruling the unwashed masses is serving them, for the good of the Imperium. Perhaps it started with good intentions, but these days it's academic. The circles are in command.
There are circles of magi in the Imperium?
We don't have dismal little mage prisons, if that's what you mean. They're academies, prestigious ones. We have Templars as well, but they don't cancel spells or whatever your Templars do. They're soldiers. They watch for abuse of magic, yes, but only those who are weak or who fall out of favor get dealt with. Mostly they enforce the Magisterium's edicts. The Chantry smiles and nods from the sidelines.
Do you really call him the Black Divine?
We don't call him that, oh no. In the Imperium, he's the true divine. The woman sitting on the Sunburst throne is some backwater pretender. It all stems from a disagreement over Andraste. Marvelous, isn't it?
Why would they disagree over Andraste?
It's not my field of expertise, but the Imperium believes Andraste was a mortal woman, a mage. Down south, they say, no, she's the bride of the Maker, ascended to his side, divine provenance, a blah blah blah. We feel better believing Andraste was one of us. Makes executing her less damning, you see. So we elected a man as divine, the South declared war, and we've been feuding cousins ever since.
So the Imperial Divine is always a man?
All the better to distinguish him from that other one, yes. Don't think there aren't a number of female magisters who bristle at that. Why can't they be divine after all? Same reason you never see a man on the Sunburst throne. Because that's how it's always been done. Excellent reasoning.
Do you consider yourself Andrastian?
The big question. It might surprise you that I do consider myself Andrastian. I simply do not believe in the Chantry. It is a relic, whether back home or here in the south. Something from a bygone age desperately clinging to relevance. It's not an opinion that makes me popular.
I disagree. I don't think the Chantry is irrelevant.
Not to most, no. Perhaps just to me. I'll say this. I may not believe in the Chantry, but I believe in you.
In me?
That the Maker sent you, whether through Andraste or fate. Cassandra is not wrong. You are what we needed most at the moment we needed it. That's what they will say in ages to come.
You don't seem like the religious sort, to be honest.
If you define religious as sitting in a chantry and listening to a blithering hen tell you how to live, then no. If you define it as believing in the possibility that something larger than yourself exists, then yes, by all means. The world is bigger than I, even bigger than you. It laughs at all the things we think we know. The Maker doesn't need me to believe, but I do. The thought of no one at all watching out for us is too frightening.
Let me ask you something else.
So many questions.
Anyone who talks about the Imperium mentions slavery. It's the center of the slave trade.
Ah, that is true.
And did you have slaves?
Not personally, but my family does and treats them well. Honestly, I never thought much about it until I came south. Back home, it's how it is. Slaves are everywhere. You don't question it. I'm not even certain many slaves do.
That's it? You don't question it?
In the south, you have alienages, slums, both human and elven. The desperate have no way out. Back home, a poor man can sell himself. As a slave, he could have a position of respect, comfort, and could even support a family. Some slaves are treated poorly, it's true. But do you honestly think inescapable poverty is better?
At least they're free. They don't have slavery forced on them.
You think people choose to be poor and oppressed? I doubt it. I don't know what it's like to be a slave, true. I never thought about it until I saw how different it was here. But I suspect you don't know either. Nor should you believe that every tale of Tevinter excess is the norm.
Just how often is blood magic used there?
Oh, not at all.
Not at all.
That's what any Magister would tell you. They'd be convincingly offended by the notion, too. Of course, what people call blood magic here, and what we consider blood magic, are two different things.
What's considered actual blood magic in Tevinter?
Blood magic isn't inherently dangerous. Using your own blood or that of a willing participant, what's the harm? The problem is that what's permitted only gets you so much power. And what if you need more? You always need more. That's where we get into sacrifices and demon summoning. None of that is done. Not officially. Behind closed doors, it's a different story. Real blood magic can give you an edge, a leg up against your opponents. It's safe to assume that any mage of rank does it. The rest are quietly shut out of power, to put it bluntly.
You'd think the Templars would object.
I imagine they did, long ago. Once, their investigations might have been sincere. Then their balls were cut off. Too inconvenient. Nowadays, only the friendless are accused. And most of them are probably innocent.
There must be some mages who oppose this.
Of course. I do. And I'm not entirely alone. Occasionally, there'll be a Magister who makes noise. And then the reform talk begins. All very patriotic. Meanwhile, that Magister will be quietly shunned. Chances are, surprise, it's learned he was a Maleficar all along. Most learn to keep quiet. Me? I enjoy the allure of pariahhood.
I'm wondering if the Imperium would be a useful ally.
I'd think you'd be more concerned whether or not they'd support the Venatori. They won't. At least, not officially. They'll disavow all knowledge of dangerous cultists. Secretly, many Magisters will rejoice at the idea. And if the South falls to chaos in the meantime, all the better.
It would be in the Imperium's best interest to help. Surely it could use allies.
I think the Imperium gave up on the idea of allies a long time ago. We've been fighting the Qunari for what, 200 years off and on? It's a point of pride that we go it alone. They'll sneer at the South behind their silk handkerchiefs and say, "You've had it easy for far too long." Let's not forget that the Inquisition seems to be an arm of the Orlesian Chantry. Anathema so far as they're concerned.
We're not part of the Chantry. The Chantry opposed the Inquisition's formation.
You think that matters? Don't be silly. The Herald of Andraste. Your very title smacks of the Southern Chantry. You may as well be a heathen. I think they're far more frightened what you'll do if you succeed.
That's all I wanted to know.
Fair enough.
It occurs to me that I barely know anything about you.
Beyond my being a mage from Tevinter, you mean?
Beyond that, yes.
And beyond my being so charming and well-dressed, which is obvious to anyone.
I'm well aware of your finer qualities, believe me.
Of course I believe you. The moment I saw you, I thought, there's a man who knows quality. Now, what was I talking about? Ah, yes, me. I am the scion of House Parvis, a product of generations of careful breeding and the repository of its hopes and dreams. Naturally, I despised it all. The lies, the scheming, the illusions of supremacy. That's Tevinter in a nutshell, isn't it? Needless to say, my family was not happy with my choices.
What did you mean by generations of careful breeding?
The great families of Tevinter don't have children. They refine traits, weed out the undesirable, and promote the rest. My mother was chosen for my father because magic runs strongly in her blood. Never mind that they loathed each other. They wanted a son who could become Archon to make House Parvis the envy of the Imperium. They got me. A cautionary tale that you should be careful what you wish for.
Why would your family be upset with your choices?
Because I rejected their idyllic plan. If they had their way, by now I'd be married to some unlucky girl from a powerful family. We'd live in luxurious despair, despising each other as I waited to take my father's place in the magisterium. I declined the honor, and thus it's best I'm far from home. Less of an embarrassment that way, you see?
I'm getting the impression you don't care much for your homeland.
On the contrary, I care for my homeland a great deal. There's so much potential. Sadly, we squander it. We refuse to acknowledge how far we've fallen because pretending is easier. We pretend the Qunari can be beaten. We pretend that we're superior to everyone, even our own people. Not everyone feels that way. I don't. Sadly, we're the minority.
It just seems so much of what you say about the Imperium is entirely negative.
It might sound that way. For all our faults, my people have many virtues. We are laden with history and culture. Tevinter is where Thedas truly began, remember? We treasure our past and preserve it. You can walk down a side street and find nothing built during the modern ages. And despite appearances, we care. Deeply, about everything. We have no reserve, not in war and not in love. If I truly believed my homeland was beyond all hope, I wouldn't miss it so much.
Why remain with the Inquisition? Why not go back to Tevinter?
I'm not exactly welcome back home. Not that it matters, I'm quite accustomed to being a pariah. It adds to my charm. I can do more for Tevinter here. If the Venatori succeed, it'll set my homeland back 1,000 years. I'm sure some magisters would disagree, but that's why we kill them.
I think I've heard enough.
That's too bad. I never tire of talking about myself.
Have you gone to see Alexius yet? He's in the cells.
Not yet, no. I saw him before they locked him up. He looked despondent, broken. Not the man I remember, nor the one I want to. I suppose the Inquisition will judge him eventually. I wonder if there's any chance they'll show him mercy. He hardly deserves it, but for Felix's sake. I can't help hoping there's something left of the man I once knew. So, I assume you're Talbashov or something like.
Why would you assume that?
If you weren't, you would have split my skull open at our first meeting before I said a word. Centuries of warfare with the Canary do lead to this state of affairs.
You've encountered Canary before?
Canary raids are rather old hat for anyone from the Eastern Imperium, although the attacks aren't quite the rampaging wars of ages past. Now we're like two angry dowagers who only remember to spit at each other when they pass on the street.
Did you meet any Canary personally?
None who weren't rushing towards me with a sword. I was too busy running in the other direction to say hello. I've met some Talbashoth in my time, however. Mercenaries and a few merchants. They're not the same as Canary. Might easily be a different people altogether.
No one in Tevinter has issues with Tal Vashoth?
I didn't say that. Prejudices are deeply rooted back home. But I have more sympathy than most. I also have an appreciation for an entire people who are so muscular. A personal failing, some would say.
Lots of people want to kill Tevinters, not just Canary.
True. Generating goodwill hasn't exactly been a Tevinter strength through the ages. A similarity of my people to yours, in fact.
You'd think it would bring us closer together.
Instead, we're like two cats in a sack. Sad, really.
I should go.
As you wish.
Magic exists to serve man and never to rule.
The mages are ready to approach the breach. I pray this will be enough to close it.
Would you be more confident if I brought back Templars instead?
I'd be less worried about the thin veil resulting in mass possession. The mages submitted to our authority. Their safety and our followers is my responsibility. I take it seriously. I recommend caution, that's all.
Is there anything I should know?
I'm glad to have the charges on our side. Bull's men are professionals, despite evidence to the contrary.
Is there anything I should know?
Not at present.
That's all for now.
I'm sure you have other matters to attend.
I should get to know you better. We're working together, after all.
What would you like to know?
All right. Where are you from?
I grew up in Ferelden, near Honolulu. I was transferred to Kirkwall shortly after the Blight. This is the first I've returned in almost 10 years.
Varric's from Kirkwall. Did you two know each other?
I knew he was friends with the champion of Kirkwall, but little else. We've spoken more since I joined the Inquisition, largely at Varric's insistence. Apparently, I spend too much time with a serious expression on my face, and it's bad for my health.
You haven't seen Ferelden in 10 years. Are you glad to be back?
I was not sorry to leave at the time. I did not expect to return. Now, between the Divine's murder and the breach, I've arrived to find nothing but chaos.
You were in Ferelden during the Blight. Did you fight Darkspawn?
No. I was stationed at Ferelden's Circle Tower. The Circle had troubles of its own. I remained there during the Blight.
What happened at the Circle Tower?
You who survived the Blight have fond memories of that time. I would prefer not to speak of it.
What was Kirkwall like?
While I was there, Canary occupied and then attacked the city. The Viscount's murder caused political unrest. Relations between mages and Templars fell apart. The apostate blew up the Chantry, and the Knight Commander went mad. Other than that, it was fine.
What happened between Kirkwall's mages and Templars?
You were at the Conclave. You must have heard people speak of it.
Yes, but you were there.
There was tension between mages and Templars long before I arrived. Eventually, it reached a breaking point. There was fighting in the streets. Abominations began killing both sides. It was a nightmare.
What happened then?
The Templars should have restored order. But Red Lyrian had driven Knight Commander Meredith mad. She threatened to kill Kirkwall's champion. Turned on her own men. I'm not sure how far she would have gone. Too far.
So you opposed her?
I stood with the champion against her, in the end. I should have seen through Meredith sooner.
I'll let you return to your work.
Should you require anything, I'll be here.
And what are we supposed to do, exactly?
What you always do. Complain.
We've already spoken with Commander Cullen. No one listens. We've been split up, regardless of our colleges, forced into quarters so small that...
This is not the Circle. You have been conscripted into the Inquisition, like any soldier.
How are we supposed to...
Deal with it. It never ends, evidently.
You don't need to tell me that.
I just don't know who told them I'm the one to yell at.
Is it that bad?
The mages are too accustomed to running or being kept prisoner. It's not easy for them. It's your doing, after all. You're the one who conscripted them.
You would have done differently, I suppose?
Oh. I do sound like I'm blaming you, don't I? I don't disapprove. In fact, you did well. You made a decision when it needed to be made. And here we are. I wish I could say this was my doing.
You're flattering me.
I'm not. This always happens. Nobody ever takes my meaning.
You should see your face.
I'm thinking less flattering things now. Let's hope the breach has your sense of humor. Yes?
May I ask you about the Chantry?
It is difficult to say what becomes of the Chantry now. They have no Templars, no leadership, and no one left who is worthy of succeeding the Divine. It has fallen apart when everyone needs it the most. I ache to think what this will mean in the days to come.
What influence does Chancellor Roderick really wield?
He's a bureaucrat, responsible for communicating the Divine's will to the rest of the Chantry. Therefore, he's accustomed to the clerics hanging on his every word, hoping his influence will benefit them. Despite that, Roderick is not a bad man. He's frightened, and believes his place is to fill the gap left by Most Holy's death. Some might agree. As far down the chain of command as he is, there is no one left above him.
How big a problem could he be?
No more than he is already. He sent his message to the College of Clerics. That is the only card he had to play. Dealing with him further only lends him credibility he doesn't deserve.
I'm surprised you rebelled against the Chantry.
I left my own order when they took the wrong path. It is no different. But in neither case did I stop caring. Indeed, I care so much that I feel drastic action is necessary. I suppose history shall one day judge my actions.
Do you really believe the Chantry is worth preserving?
I do. Though I understand how someone born outside of human society might think otherwise. Cast the Chantry aside and new problems replace old ones. We will have learned nothing from history. The people need stability, and the Chantry needs a new purpose. Andraste had a dream for us. It can still be achieved.
So what should that new purpose be?
A dedication to what is truly important. Instead of building cathedrals and sewing gowns for the divine, the Chantry used to spend its coin feeding the poor. If we are to spread the Maker's word across the world, we must do so with open hearts and open hands.
That sounds rather idealistic of you.
Does it? I do not think it's so unachievable. The Chantry has many good, honest people. They just need direction and inspiration. They need to be freed from centuries of adherence to tradition and ceremony. A chance for renewal is at our fingertips. It does not have to come with utter chaos.
Will the Chantry replace Divine Justinia?
They will try. Once the priests withdraw for the Grand Consensus, it is against Chantry law for them to emerge without naming a new divine. Sometimes it takes days, or weeks, or even months. The problem now is that no clear successor to Justinia exists. All worthy clerics died with her at the Conclave.
So what happens if they can't agree on something?
Theoretically, they will argue until exhaustion takes them or they see reason. Practically, however, if the Grand Consensus goes on too long, the Chantry will crumble. Any cleric with ambition but little sense will see this as her one chance, and plenty of such clerics exist. We shall see what happens. The Inquisition must act in the meantime.
If they do choose a new divine, will you serve her?
That depends on whether she would have me. I am a rebel now, remember? And even if she would, I do not know. It would depend on what type of divine she is. I am no longer in a position to follow blindly, and no new divine could expect such obedience now.
Thank you.
Nice work at Redcliffe. I could help the mages learn to work with Inquisition soldiers if you like. Not that the chief has any apostates in the group.
Can we talk about the Bull's Chargers?
Best company you'll find from here to the Anderfells. In my time with the chief, we've gone up against everything from bandits to magic trees. We're expensive, but you'll never doubt we're worth it. Want to know anything in particular?
Do the Chargers specialize in anything from a tactical standpoint?
Bull doesn't want us large enough to work as an army. We're better as shock troops to skirmishers. We've got archers for hitting enemy infantry, Dalish with more archery, and Skinner and her people on the flanks. Rocky handles fortifications and traps, and Stitches keeps us all fighting. They mostly hold back. I'll lead the frontline fighters with Grim, and the chief goes wherever he can hit something.
I assume the Chargers observe the standard etiquette.
Absolutely. Clean record and cleared to take jobs in any country you can name. We accept surrenders for ransom from mercenaries, nobles, and soldiers wearing a lord's colors. Our prisoners are treated well, injuries tended. We'd want the same for any of ours who got captured.
You said something about everything from bandits to magic trees. I'll admit to some curiosity.
Right. Sylvans. That's what Dalish called them. Apparently spirits can possess trees, too. Some noble in the Dales, and they really don't like it when you call them Dalish nobles, had a haunted forest. His family had abandoned the land, but he wanted it back. The chief bought us all axes, and in we went. Between the axes and the torches, the Sylvans weren't too bad. Worst part was the squirrels.
We'll talk later.
So, that Tevinter guy sent you into the future?
If you're worried about magic, I can protect you.
My blade pretty much protects me.
Perhaps I can do things your blade can't.
I don't know. It has blood grooves. Well, technically, it's the Fuller, but Blood Grooves sound so much more violent. Anyway, I hope our new friends have what it takes to close the breach. Damn thing gives me a headache just looking at it.
Smith.
Make her look at it. So much easier to ignore when it's far away. And to actually walk out of it, to be that close.
If I hadn't been saved by Inquisition soldiers, I don't know what would have happened.
Inquisition soldiers? That's not what I've heard. I have to admit, I thought you'd be...
human.
Yes.
Being up front is better than Oxman.
It was a foolish thought. Should have known better than to say anything. It's what you do and how you do it that's important. Just one question then. How do you think you fit in with all this?
It's been a whirlwind. It's hard to say where I fit.
I guess we'll have to figure that out. For me, I'll be satisfied so long as we find the bastards that killed the Divine. They owe us some answers. I've heard rumors of abandoned Warden camps all over these parts. If we have time, I'd like to take a look. See if there's anything we can salvage.
Let's talk about the Grey Wardens. You must know a lot about them.
Ah, the Wardens. I'm afraid we're less exciting than we seem.
The Blight's been over for 10 years. What do Wardens do when the world's not ending?
There is still Darkspawn. Just because we killed so many in Ferelden doesn't mean they're gone. And the world is not so peaceful that there's no use for good men with swords. Sometimes you have to figure out for yourself what the pledge to protect others really means. It's not always about just archdemons and blights.
Where were you during the Blight?
I was in Ferelden, on my own, like always. Quietly killed my fair share of Darkspawn too.
You haven't had contact with other Wardens for a while. Why were you on your own?
It's what I've always done. Recruitment only requires one man. Besides, I've always been a loner. Works best for everyone that way.
So, you have no idea where the rest of the Wardens are?
Do you find that odd? The Blight is over. We don't need an organized force. And orders don't change much from day to day. For the last 1,000 years or so, it's been just find Darkspawn, kill them, repeat as necessary.
Let's continue this at another time.
As you wish. I'll be here if you need me. There was never going to be an easy answer to the mage dilemma. The mages are dangerous. There's no way around it. You chose for the good of us all. I can respect that. Something on your mind?
I want to hear more about you.
Compared to yours, my life will seem dull indeed.
Your name Blackwall doesn't sound Orlesian. Marcher, then? Ferelden?
I was from the Free Marchers originally. Markham. That was a long time ago. Another life.
I hear that many Wardens were once criminals.
You're right. And when you join, your past is forgotten, so let's leave it that way.
Why did you join the Wardens?
Because they remember honor and sacrifice. Words that have little meaning to the rest of us. Because they lay down their lives for those they have sworn to protect. We all need to believe there are such men in the world. I needed to believe I could be one of them.
What did you do before you became a Warden?
I was a soldier, a nobody trained to wield a sword and follow orders. I grew weary of fighting other men's wars.
So you became a Warden?
More or less. Becoming a Grey Warden was the first time I felt like I mattered. The life I led before seems hollow in comparison. Perhaps one day it will fade away.
We can continue this discussion at another time.
Very well. Yes?
What do you think of the Inquisition?
I expected more. More men, better equipment. You may have Andraste's favor, but wars are won by men, soldiers.
brute force is not always the answer. There are plenty of other paths to victory.
True enough. Still, it never hurts to be prepared. One thing I will say about your men, they're passionate, devoted. You inspire them. Build on that foundation, and you will have an army that makes nations tremble.
What do you think about all this trouble between the mages and Templars?
Looking at it from where we stand, it seems inevitable. But that could be hindsight. How many of us actually saw it coming? Either way, I don't think the Chantry will ever recover.
What do you think of the Inquisition's cause?
Restoring order is a goal I support wholeheartedly. But that's not the end of it, is it? Not by a half. The Lady Seeker believes we are restoring the Chantry. Others say it needs reform. I don't know where you stand on the matter, and I'll admit I haven't made up my mind either.
What do you think of Haven?
It's a war camp that was once a pilgrim's refuge. It's the state of the world, though, isn't it? Holy ground turned into a battlefield. Pity about that temple. Would have been nice to see it.
You'll have what you need.
Heard you found something that had to do with wardens. Would have liked to have seen it. I've been meaning to thank you. There are 100 things that need your attention. You didn't have to take the time to help me, and yet you did.
Don't mention it. We happen to be in the area.
And here I thought we were having a special bonding moment. But I've seen enough of this Inquisition to believe that we do good work.
There will be opportunities for us to do even more in the future.
Then I look forward to it.
Nothing right now. Perhaps in a bit.
So it's true. Butler has stand on us. I hope my hunch was wrong.
You knew him well?
Not as well as I thought. Show me the reports. There were so many questions surrounding Farria's death. Did he think we wouldn't notice? He's killed Farria, one of my best agents, and knows where the others are. You know what must be done. Make it clean. Painless if you can. We were friends once.
It will be done.
I'm sorry you had to see that. Trust me. Everything I do is to protect our interests. Now, if you're happy, I have more work to do. Reports of fade rifts and demons keep coming. The people are terrified, and it's only getting worse. The only thing that will calm their fears now is the hope that someone out there can save them. You have to be that someone. No one else has any power over the rifts. Seal them. Your legend will spread, and Thedas will learn to trust the Inquisition.
Why do you want me to seek out the rebel mages? Why do you care?
I've known mages. Some of them were better people than me. And yet I'm free and they're not. It's not right.
In Redcliffe, you sacrificed yourself so that I could return here.
Of course I did. One small life in exchange for a second chance at history. I always loved a bargain.
It was still a sacrifice, and still noble.
And I would do it again.
Anything I should know?
Altegan has returned to Redcliffe Castle and resumed his duties as Lord. The people are returning, slowly but surely. They seem grateful to the Inquisition for the return of their village.
They called you the left hand of the Divine.
That they did? What of it?
I'd like to hear about Justinia. What was she like?
A friend. A mentor. Like me, she had secrets, made mistakes. It made her human. I think her followers responded to that.
How did you and Justinia meet?
I met her a long time ago, before she became divine. Before she was Justinia. When I met her, she was Mother Dorothea. I was at my lowest. Broken, lost. And she saved me. No, wait. She hates it when I say that. I saved myself. She just showed me it was possible.
Was there something more than friendship between you?
You're asking if we were lovers? Typical. I was devoted to her, therefore it must be romantic. Love is common. Love is simple. My bond with Justinia was something greater. She was a sister, a mother, a teacher. So to answer your question, yes, it was more than friendship.
We'll talk more later.
It seems Blackwall knows nothing about the disappearance of the Grey Wardens. It's a disappointment. I am, however, glad that he is with us, even if he was not what I expected. He seems to be a good man, and his experience will be an asset to the Inquisition. As for the other Wardens, I suppose we will have to keep looking.
Anything I should know?
I've nothing to report at the moment.
Let's talk about you.
Me?
Bards tell tales. I bet you tell some good ones.
There are plenty of tales in the library. Perhaps you should look for them there.
What did you do before you worked for the Divine?
I was a bard, an Orlesian spy for many years. For a time I also served a small cloister in Lothering. After the Blight, the Divine called on me to oversee her personal network.
I should leave you to your work.
We can always talk later. I hear the mages will now answer to the Inquisition. And when you no longer need them, will they be locked up and forgotten again? Most would treat their dogs with more kindness.
You don't support my decision.
The circles don't work. We've seen it. I wanted the Inquisition to find a better way.
You seem to know a great many people.
I have made friends, and on occasion enemies. It's unavoidable.
You have a history with the Warden who ended the Blight, don't you?
I count him among my closest friends. I still write to him for advice when I can. He hasn't replied to my letters in some time. I try not to worry about it. He can take care of himself.
They say you spent some time in Lothering. Did you know the champion?
We spoke a few times. I seldom left the Chantry, and we never became more than casual acquaintances. I saw more of the Hawk twins. Bethany in particular. She would spend time in meditation at the Chantry, and she seemed to like my stories. The other one, the young man, he was a little surly. I did encounter the champion again later in Kirkwall. Those were terrible times.
Was this when the Chantry was destroyed?
No, that happened later. But even then, the news coming out of Kirkwall was disheartening. There were some in Val Royeaux who wanted the Divine to declare an exalted march on Kirkwall. Justina sent me there to see if that could be avoided, to gather evidence to calm those agitating for war. I guess it didn't matter in the end.
We can continue this conversation later.
You know where I am.
What do you think about the people who have gathered?
Again with your people. Right, which ones?
What about Solus?
Solus? His head's crammed up 1,000 years ago.
Anything to say about Varric?
Varric? Too clever. Always saying something, but never saying it straight.
Thoughts about Cassandra?
Not as buttoned up as she plays, right? Tough, though. I'd stand behind her in front of anything.
What about Dorian?
He's fun. Could lose a bit more to Vinter.
Thoughts on Iron Bull?
He makes me wonder about things. You do too. Mostly about what your women look like.
Any thoughts about Warden Blackwall?
He's too good, right? Like to see him out of that uniform. Not like that.
What's your opinion of Vivienne?
She's a bitch, but she knows. She better.
What do you think about our spy master, ambassador, and commander?
Liliana is pretty in places. Swear I've seen her too. Or heard she used to play. But that'd be mad. Now Josephine, she's as good at humbling her kind as I am. Just with less mess. Knows her business, if you have to have it. And Cullen, I suppose if you want a jackboot, you get a big one so you can grow into it. Nice hair though.
We'll talk later.
Good, right? I'll be here.
What are your thoughts about the others in the Inquisition?
What exactly is Varric's role in the Inquisition? Aside from irritating Cassandra.
What do you think of my advisors?
Cullen. He's got the look of a man who's been through too much. He's seen the best and the worst of humanity, and I think he still struggles with where that leaves him. Still, I trust him to watch my back.
What do you think of my advisors?
렐리아나 seems nice. Also a little frightening, but mostly nice.
Does Liliana frighten you? Has she said anything to you?
No, she hasn't said anything. I'd just rather not offend her. I don't want to wake up with a blade in my kidneys if I can help it. Josephine's lovely, and craftier than you'd expect. The Inquisition could not have picked a better ambassador. You're eyeing the Lady Seeker, aren't you? I can see why. She's definitely striking. A little stern, though.
I'd say she's a lot stern.
She's a warrior. That's all she knows. And it's suited her thus far. Madame Vivian only allied with the Inquisition because she knows it will bring her power. The most poisonous snakes are often the most beautiful. Don't play Diamondback with Solus. You've been warned. Taught him the game last night. He turned around and beat me at it. Lost everything. Had to walk back to my quarters with only a bucket for my bits. Dorian? He's arrogant. He preens himself. But you already know that. He doesn't even hide it. Sarah doesn't know who she is or what she wants. And doesn't even care.
All right.
Let us begin.
Let's see what we have.